Chapter 2042. Boom! The flames that exploded the ground were like an erupting volcano, setting off a scorching pillar of fire. The scorching flames soared into the sky, setting off layers of heat waves while reaching the ceiling of the 52nd floor. The ceiling was scorched black, and it almost did not penetrate and spread to the 51st floor. The red lotus-like flames illuminated the faces of Noah and the others, dyeing the originally lightless 52nd floor into a fiery red color. At this moment, the faces of Ace, Tiona, Finn, Riveria, Gareth, Bert, and the others became ugly. Leafia's pretty face was pale, without a trace of blood left. Even Noah was shocked by the abnormal situation in front of him. That scene was like the detonation of an incendiary bomb, making everyone's heart feel as if it was grasped tightly by a hand that represented death, almost shattering into pieces. "Quick!" Finn yelled without caring about his image. "Full speed ahead." No one objected to Finn's order. Everyone took out their fastest speed, and with a momentum that seemed to want to crush the ground, they turned into a gust of wind and rushed forward. "Damn it!" Bert's angry curses rang out. Did we get sniped as expected? Sniping. It was indeed sniping. The scorching aura that came from afar all told Noah that something was sniping them and the others. It was on the floor below. Noah finally understood why Finn said that common sense above the 50th floor was useless here. Above the 50th floor, the monsters were all entrenched in their own floors, and there were very few examples of crossing floors. If an adventurer encountered a monster on another floor, the probability of winning 1,000,000 Varus with 100 Varus was not much higher than going to a casino. Now, Noah and the others encountered something even more abnormal. It was not the appearance of a monster crossing floors. It was the attack of a monster crossing floors. Some kind of monster with long-range attack means was on the floor below, like a cannon, aiming at Noah and the others who were marching on the 52nd floor, and sniping. This was absolutely impossible to encounter in the area above the 50th floor. However, Noah just had to encounter it. In this floor that Finn compared to hell. In the next second, Noah and AIC's expressions changed again. The violent and scorching aura once again approached from below at an astonishing speed. Boom! A roar that was loud enough to hurt one's eardrums resounded through the maze again. Behind Noah and the others, the ground was directly blown up by the huge fireball that soared into the sky, setting off raging flames all over the sky, like a fiery red wave, attacking the surroundings. Gareth and Riveria, who were at the back, let out muffled groans. The rest of the people also more or less let out sorrowful cries. If it weren't for the fact that the people here were all powerful adventurers, they would have been blown away by the strong wind and rolled to the ground. The sniping across the floors was still ongoing. Noah. Ace. Finn was so anxious that he even called out Noah's real name. Can you feel how many enemies there are? No. No. Ace answered with a voice that was much louder than usual while running. The distance is too far. I can only feel the bombardment. I can't either. Noah closed his eyes, activated his sensing ability, and immediately shook his head. The distance is really far, at least below the 55th floor, there is no trace of the enemy at all. Sure enough, it's not possible. Finn bit his thumb. During this period, the scorching fireball once again blasted the ground behind the running group of Rockies, directly melting the thick rock into liquid like magma, covering the ground one after another. Boom, boom, boom. The ground that had been blasted open by the violent explosion gradually began to crack, causing the rubble to crumble like pieces of trash as they continuously followed the crater and collapsed downwards. In the blink of an eye, one after another large hole appeared in the passage of the 52nd floor. The surrounding was like magma was baked into a fiery red color, like a burning furnace, making people speechless. Under such circumstances, in order to avoid the bombardment from below, the group of Rockies could only run with all their might. They could not stay in the same place. If they stayed in the same place, they would end up being burned to ashes along with the ground. No one wanted to end up like that. Therefore, everyone rushed forward with all their might, hoping to cross the floors as quickly as possible and find the entrance to the 53rd floor. Ha! 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 Not long after, Leafia, who was of a lower level and had weaker stamina, began to pant heavily. Leafia! Finn immediately noticed the situation and ordered with an unquestionable tone. Hurry up and replenish. Recover your strength. Yes. Leafia hurriedly pulled the large backpack on her back, ready to rummage through it for elixirs. It was at this moment that something unexpected happened. Noah was the first to notice the abnormality and quickly called out. Be careful. Unfortunately, the group that was focused on the bombardment from below did not react in time. Whoosh! In an instant, the sound of something breaking through the air was heard. It was a monster that had been hiding in the shadows since the beginning, watching Noah's group with blood-red eyes, not daring to approach at all. However, when Leafia let down her guard and everyone's attention was attracted by the bombardment from below, the monster hiding in the shadows finally made its move. It was a silver-white snake. Hiss! The silver snake hissed and shot out like a sharp arrow. It passed through Bert, who was beside Leafia, and went straight for Leafia, who was rummaging through her backpack. Leafia seemed to have only just reacted at this moment. She turned her head and looked at the source of the sound of something breaking through the air. There, the silver snake had already scuttled in front of Leafia and opened its mouth, which was filled with two sharp fangs. A fishy smell came from the snake's mouth and hit Leafia's face. At this moment, Leafia felt as if time had stopped for her. Leafia! The first-level adventurers of Rocky's clan cried out in alarm. In the end, only one person reacted in time. Clang! Accompanied by the sound of a sword, a silver sword flashed through the air. Splat! Amidst the clear tearing sound, the silver snake that was scuttling toward Leafia was cut in half by the knight's sword with an indestructible attribute. Blood splattered everywhere. The one who attacked was naturally Noah, who was the one closest to Leafia and was protected in the middle as a support, just like Leafia. Seeing this scene, Finn and the rest could not help but sigh in relief. However, A's expression changed abruptly as she cried out in alarm. Don't! Almost at the same time as A's cry of alarm rang out, Noah suddenly pulled the backpack from his back into his hands and threw it to Gareth, who was in front of him. Yes. In front. Gareth, who was supposed to be at the back, was now in front of Noah and Leafia. The situation happened too suddenly, causing Leafia to fall behind and be overtaken by Gareth and Riveria, who were at the back. As for Noah, in order to save Leafia, he also fell behind. Thus, the first-level adventurers of Rocky's clan all overtook Noah and Leafia and rushed to the front. After throwing the backpack to Gareth, Noah did not hesitate and immediately hugged Leafia. Boom! An earth-shattering roar sounded. Following the explosion of the ground, raging flames that soared to the sky engulfed Noah and Leafia. Noah and Leafia, along with the ground they were standing on, were engulfed by the large fireball that came from the floor below. The pillar of fire soared to the sky and reached the ceiling. Their footing was destroyed, and in the raging flames that soared to the sky, the two figures that were embracing each other fell down together and disappeared in an instant. Seeing this happen with her own eyes, A's head heated up and she did not hesitate to explode, turning into a bullet that shot straight into the raging flames that soared to the sky. At the same time, with a clear clang, a bracelet fell to the ground. Wake up! In the midst of a chant that sounded like a clear spring, a whirlwind wrapped around A's body. Immediately after that, A's rushed directly into the raging flames and jumped into the hole. Boom! Another explosion sounded, but this time, the ceiling above could not withstand the impact of the raging flames and suddenly burst open. Debris fell all over the sky and buried the hole. Chapter 2043. Amidst the explosions, the magma-like hole was buried by the rubble from the ceiling. A thick cloud of dust was raised, and it was extremely pungent. Under such circumstances, Noah, Aze, and Lethea disappeared from everyone's sight. Aze. Both Tiona and Tiorn's expressions changed. Tisk. Bert also clicked his tongue. Just as he was about to rush over, he was immediately stopped. No one is allowed to return. Finn ordered in a strict tone. We can't stop. Otherwise, we'll be sniped. Keep going. Isn't this a little too much? Bert's expression became abnormally ugly. Do you think AIC will be fine if she brings those two burdens along and roams the lower floors alone? It will be fine. Finn answered without hesitation. As long as that man is here, no matter what, it won't be a problem to keep one life. What we need to worry about is ourselves. Everyone, keep going. This is the commander's order. Finn didn't care whether Bert would follow his orders or not. He immediately turned around and continued to rush forward. Let's go, Riveria also said. Finn's words are always right. Don't think about jumping into any random hole that has been blasted open. Gareth even warned them. With the floor as a barrier, the enemy won't be able to hit us 100%. But if you jump in directly, you'll be exposing yourselves to the muzzle of the cannon. If you die, you can only blame yourselves. After saying that, Riveria and Gareth followed Finn. Will it be fine? Finn is right. With that man here, rather than worrying about them, it's better to worry about ourselves. Tiona and Tiorn struggled for a moment before sighing. Then, they picked up their pace and chased after them. Only Bert was left. He clenched his fists and looked at the buried hole. He cursed angrily. Bastards! After that, Bert followed them and continued to rush through the labyrinth. Kaboom! After an unknown number of explosions, the scorching big fireball turned into a cannonball that soared into the sky and exploded in the entire crater. The soaring flames formed a deadly wave of fire, rolling in the space. In an instant, it enveloped several floors, dyeing everything in its path with a fiery red color, making people think of the inside of a volcano. It was extremely shocking. Terrifying heat filled the entire labyrinth. That high temperature was definitely able to melt a thick piece of steel into molten iron in an instant. If someone was directly engulfed by such a wave of fire, they would definitely turn into ashes in an instant. However, in the midst of such a spreading wave of fire, a brilliant white light suddenly shone. Clank! The dazzling white light suddenly expanded and covered the entire wave of fire in the blink of an eye. Under the cover of the white light, the boiling hot wave of fire suddenly trembled. It was as if it was neatly split apart, bursting out a dazzling white line. Bang! At the moment of the muffled explosion, the boiling hot wave of fire exploded and was truly split into neat blocks. Then, it scattered into sparks that filled the sky and dissipated in the air. Only then did the dazzling white light gradually converge, revealing the scene at the center. There, two figures were tightly hugging each other. They were directly floating in midair and did not fall down. Lethea opened her eyes with lingering fear as she muttered in a daze. I'm still alive. Yes. Noah hugged Lethea's slender waist with one hand and hugged her in his arms. Looking at Lethea, who subconsciously hugged him tightly, he laughed out loud. You're still alive for now, but I don't know what will happen later. Lethea was slightly startled. Under Lethea's startled gaze, Noah lowered his head, looked down, and said indifferently. After all, we're now exposing ourselves to the enemy's cannons. Hearing Noah's words, Lethea's pretty face stiffened. She lowered her head abruptly and looked down. In the next second, Lethea saw it. Hundreds of meters below, in a vast cavern, a few gigantic creatures were standing side by side, looking up at the sky. Their eyes flashed with a ferocious light. Looking at those gigantic creatures, Leafia's heart trembled again and again. No matter in which world, dragons were one of the most powerful creatures. This principle was also applicable in the underground city. All the adventurers believed that in the underground city, among the monsters of the same level, the most powerful existence was the dragon. Unless there was a floor owner. Otherwise, if there were dragon-type monsters on a floor, these dragon-type monsters would definitely be the most powerful existence on that floor. Therefore, out of fear of dragon-type monsters, the adventurers collectively called them the Monster Kings. At this moment, Leafia saw the kings of these monsters. Moreover, they were the Monster Kings from the 58th floor. Ooh, 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 ooh. Amidst the earth-shaking dragon roars, in the cavern of the 58th floor, a few gigantic red dragons lined up and roared at Noah and Leafia in the distance. They were more than 10 meters long, even bigger than the floor owner on the 17th floor, Goliath. They stood on their feet but did not have wings. Looking at those gigantic red dragons roaring at the sky, Leafia squeezed out a voice with difficulty. Cannon dragon. Cannon dragon. That was the main culprit that turned the area from the 52nd floor into hell. It was a type of monster that only appeared on the 58th floor. Like its name, these gigantic red dragons could spit fireballs and launch cannons. Their cannons could bombard the 53rd to 57th floors all the way to the 52nd floor. Therefore, once an adventurer stepped onto the 52nd floor, these cannon dragons would all sense it and launch a merciless sniper attack at the enemy who was 5 or 6 floors away. What did this mean? It meant that once the adventurers stepped onto the 52nd floor, their enemies would no longer be limited to monsters on a single floor like before. From the 52nd floor onwards, the common sense of dungeons would no longer be useful. The reason for this was these cannon dragons. The gigantic red dragons that were more than 10 meters long roared in unison, slowly opening their ferocious mouths filled with sharp fangs. Inside, waves of violent flames began to surge and compress into shape in the mouths of the cannon dragons, turning into gigantic fireballs. The group of cannon dragons pointed their cannon muzzles, dragon mouths, directly above them and spat out scorching fireballs. The gigantic fireballs immediately exploded the ceiling above the cannon dragons, which was the floor of the 57th floor. They blasted the ground of each floor and soared into the sky, all the way to the 52nd floor. The cannons from the 58th floor must have caused Finn and the others to flee in panic, not daring to stay in the same place, right? One of the gigantic fireballs pierced through the ground of each floor that had already been blasted apart and shot toward Noah and Leafia, who were floating in the air. The heat wave had already arrived in front of Noah and Leafia. Just as Leafia's pretty face turned pale and a cold glint flashed across Noah's eyes, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly rang out from above. A figure surrounded by formless wind and waves descended from the sky. Like a dazzling meteor, she shot straight toward the gigantic fireball that soared into the sky. Dong! Amidst the deafening explosion, the silver rapier was like a long spear as it pierced through the fireball that was shooting towards her. Waves of fire surged into the sky, but they were blown away by the wind that lingered around her slender body. Looking at the figure that suddenly descended and was surrounded by wind, Leafia cried out in surprise. Miss Ace. Hearing Leafia's call, Ace, who was holding the indestructible rapier and surrounded by wind, turned her head and looked at Noah and Leafia, who were floating in the air. The expression on her pretty face softened a little. Ace immediately spoke softly. Are you guys all right? I'm fine, Leafia hurriedly replied. As for Noah, he glanced at the surroundings and said, let's go. Something will happen very soon. Why did he say that? Because Noah and the other two were already surrounded. Roar, 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 roar. Amidst a dragon's roar that was completely different from the cannon dragons, purple-blue flying dragons that looked like pterosaurs flew out of the gaps in the floors and swarmed toward Noah and the others. Chapter 2044. In the past, before Loki's clan and Freya's clan had risen, Eulalia also had two of the most powerful clans known as the Double Kings, ruling the peak of the entire Maze City. One of the two clans was called Zeus's clan, and the other was called Hera's clan. Among them, Zeus's clan's main business was to explore the dungeon. Like Loki's clan, they were the most typical exploration-type clans. That clan had once reached the 59th floor, and until now, it still had the highest record of reaching the floor. And after Zeus's clan declined and was replaced by Loki's clan and Freya's clan, no one had ever reached the 59th floor again. Of course, Zeus's clan had also set foot on the 52nd floor and was bombarded from the 58th floor. The cross-floor sniping was not only like a joke, but also made the 52nd to 58th floors a real area. Even if the adventurers were lucky enough to avoid the cannon dragon sniping, it would lead to another danger. The floors were connected. Just like the middle floor had vertical holes that could connect the upper and lower floors, the cannon dragons would forcefully open the vertical holes on the 52nd to 58th floors. Then, in each connected floor, another kind of monster king would appear. That was, in the horizontal holes that connected the vertical holes like an ant's nest, there were flying dragons more than 3 meters long. For these monster kings with wings, the vertical holes that were forcefully opened by the cannon dragons were simply the gates of a cage. Once they appeared, the flying dragons would break free from the cage called the floor and attack the adventurers through the vertical holes opened by the cannon dragons. In other words, this was another kind of attack that ignored the floor. The cannon dragons and flying dragons, which were collectively known as the Monster Kings, were the factors that turned the 52nd to 58th floors into hell. Therefore, Zeus's clan who had set foot here called this area the Dragon's Kettle. It was a true Dragon's Kettle cave. Whoa 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 whoa. The roars of the cannon dragons set off bursts of flames that were compressed between their ferocious fangs. Roar 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 roar. The roars of the wyverns turned into waves that reverberated throughout the wilderness of the maze. While the cannon dragons on the 58th floor continued to bombard the first-level adventurers of Loki's clan on the 52nd floor, a dense group of flying dragons flew out from the horizontal holes on the 56th and 57th floors and surrounded Noah, Ace, and Leafia through the vertical holes. In terms of circumstances, there was really nothing worse and more dangerous than the current development. Not to mention, Leafia could not fly yet. Ace's ability to fly for a short period of time using magic was also about to reach its limit. Faced with the current situation, it couldn't get any worse. Ace's expression hardened. Just as she was about to attack, she was pulled into Noah's embrace by his other hand. Noah, who was hugging Ace with one hand and Leafia with the other, lowered his eyes and looked at the 58th floor several hundred meters below. He suddenly said this. Let's go straight to the 58th floor. Ha! Ace and Leafia were stunned. In response, Noah only said this one sentence. Let's get rid of all the cannon dragons and lure the surrounding wyverns away. This way, Finn and the rest won't be in danger. Ace's eyes lit up. Only Leafia had an uneasy expression on her face. There are only 3 of us. Can we deal with so many cannon dragons and wyverns? Is there a way? Noah curled his lips and smiled. We'll know once we try. As soon as he finished speaking. Swoosh! In the faint sound of the air being torn apart, Noah's figure suddenly turned into an arrow that left the bow and swooped down to the floor below. Roar 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 roar. The wyverns that surrounded them saw that the enemy did not escape and instead rushed down. One after another, they let out angry roars and flapped the wings on their backs. Instead of retreating, they advanced and turned into a tide that surged up violently. In the blink of an eye, the adventurers from the sky and the monsters from the underground met resolutely and collided with a loud bang. There was no suspense. The large group of wyverns that had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers instantly engulfed Noah, A's, and Lefia's group. The three of them were completely submerged and could not be seen at all. However, almost at the same time, a light and lively voice sounded. Wind. In the instant that extremely short chant sounded, a gust of wild wind burst out from the wyverns. A's, who was surrounded by an invisible whirlwind, waved the thin sword in her hand fiercely, interweaving a series of silver sword flashes. Like a violent storm, she slashed in all directions. Slash slash slash. In the incomparably clear tearing sounds, the large wyverns were sliced into pieces by the sword array made of thin swords that were enhanced by wind and had increased attack power and sharpness. Fresh blood splattered on the ground. At this moment, A's, who was in Noah's arms, seemed to have transformed into a meat grinder. She weaved a sword dance that sang the song of death, beheading every wyvern that flew away. For a moment, minced meat flew everywhere, blood splashed, and the wyverns' miserable howls before their deaths resounded throughout the world. It was frightening. Undoubtedly, it was such a bloody scene. A's, who was constantly weaving the sword dance, did not let a single drop of blood touch her body. Her waist-length hair fluttered in the wind, and her cold and beautiful face was suffused with holiness. She gave off a sacred and inviolable feeling. This was the swordswoman. Even if she was as powerful as a ghost, the scene of her battle was as beautiful as a dance. That was why she received the word swordswoman. Hugging the world's most beautiful meat grinder, Noah shot down like a sharp arrow, turning himself and the others into a sharp knife, piercing through the densely packed wyverns that were violently surging towards them. Thus, Noah, A's, and Lefia's group of three crossed the 53rd floor, and even immediately crossed the 54th floor. Through the tunnel forcefully opened by the cannon dragons, they swept towards the 58th floor. Roar, 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 roar. Breaking out of the encirclement while holding an absolute advantage in numbers, the wyverns were furious. One after another, they let out roars that shook the air and chased after them. However, the wyverns seemed to understand how dangerous it was to approach them. They actually firmly hung behind Noah's group, opening their mouths and spitting out scorching flame bullets. These wyverns actually also knew how to use long-range breath attacks. However, there was a clear difference between the wyverns' breath attacks and the cannon dragons. At least, the cannon dragons' fireballs were as large as 3 or 4 meters in diameter, while the wyverns' flame bullets were only the size of a human head. It was obvious that they were proficient in different areas. However, although the quality was not high, the quantity was quite shocking. The flame bullets spat out by the wyverns formed a dense barrage that fell like raindrops, causing A's pupils to shrink abruptly. Just as the barrage of flame bullets was about to bombard the group, a violent magical force rose up. Clang! A dazzling white light burst out from Noah, who was carrying a young girl with both hands and had no free hands, and covered the group of 3 that swooped down. As soon as the flame bullets fell from the sky came into contact with the dazzling white light, they immediately paused one after another, and were immediately divided into cubes by the white lines one after another before exploding with a loud bang. The barrage that was enough to make any adventurer of a clan shudder was easily neutralized just like that. Pft, pft, pft. The silver sword sliced through the air, killing one after another flying dragons that were charging at him. Boom, 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 boom. The dazzling white light constantly flickered, shattering the flame bullets that fell from the sky one after another. At this moment, Noah and A's, one focused on defense while the other focused on attack, broke through the obstruction of countless wyverns along the way, and rushed through several floors as though they were unimpeded. Looking at Noah and A's, Lefia couldn't react for a long time, and could only murmur softly. So powerful, 2 people. Just 2 people, and they actually strangled a large group of wyverns in hell, which was known as the dragon pot, as though there was no resistance. Compared to these two people, she was really nothing. Not only was she of no help, but she was also a hindrance. After all, if it wasn't for her, Noah wouldn't have fallen from the 52nd floor, and Ace wouldn't have rushed down from the 52nd floor as well. In the end, she was still a hindrance. Thinking of this, Leafia bit her lips, and her eyes burned with fighting spirit. I definitely don't want to be a hindrance. Chapter 2045. The roars of the wyverns reverberated throughout the entire underground maze, causing the monsters that could neither fly nor leave their respective floors to tremble. Noah was still carrying Aic and Leafia as he dove down at an extremely fast speed. Dazzling white light bloomed from his body from time to time, shattering all the fiery bullets that attacked him as he plunged downwards without slowing down. However, the closer he got to the 58th floor, the more obvious the obstacles became. Wyverns flapped their wings continuously from the horizontal holes of the various floors and flew out in groups. Like moths to a flame, they swarmed towards Noah and his party in a dense swarm. As time passed, the number of wyverns increased, causing Aic, who was constantly swinging her sword, to feel a little strenuous. At the same time, the great crimson dragon that had been firing cannons at the first-year adventurers of the Loki clan began to turn its attention to Noah, Aic, and Leafia, who were diving down. It roared while aiming its huge mouth that was filled with compressed flames at them. Seeing this scene clearly, Noah and Aic's eyes flashed. Just as the two of them were about to make their moves, a third person's voice rang out. Proud warriors, archers of the forest, advancing raiders in front, pick up your bows, respond to the voice of your brethren, knock your arrows. The sudden melodious chant startled Noah and Aic. Although they didn't stop what they were doing, they turned their gazes in another direction. Ignite the flames, lights of the forest, I command you to release your arrows. Fire arrows of the elves, rain down like rain, burn the barbarians. Leafia, who was being carried by Noah on the other side, had raised the wand in her hand at some point in time. She pointed it downwards, her red lips spitting out clear syllables that sounded like water droplets dripping onto a plate. Amidst the melodious chant, an incomparably mysterious magical formation suddenly appeared at the tip of the wand that Leafia was pointing downwards. It wasn't a magical formation in the true sense of the word. In this world, except for a few special spells, magical formations wouldn't appear when the rest of the spells were used. However, if someone had learned the development ability of Magitech, then a magical formation would appear when they use magic. This magical formation represented the development ability of Magitech. It could enhance the power of magic, expand the range of effect, increase the efficiency of mental strength, and various other benefits when using magic. It was the symbol of a high-grade sorcerer. As the successor of Olivelia, the most powerful sorcerer in Orly, it was impossible for Leafia not to have learned the development of magic conduit. Thus, at the tip of Leafia's wand, complex patterns were drawn on the multiple rings that had been constructed using her mental strength that had been converted into mana. The patterns flickered with a thick golden light, illuminating Leafia's beautiful face. In the next second, Leafia opened her eyes. Suddenly, a surge of flames appeared within the magic array, condensing into thick flame spears that filled the area in front of the magic array. Fire javelins. A rain of fire arrows suddenly descended. Fire javelins that filled the sky fell from the sky, explosively shooting down, forming a barrage of attacks that fell downwards like a torrential downpour. Bang, 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 bang. As a series of continuous explosions rang out, a large amount of flames burst forth, causing waves of fire to sweep out. The flames enveloped the wyverns that charged out from the holes on the various floors, engulfing all of the monsters. The wyverns didn't even have time to scream before their bodies were incinerated, and they were buried in the sea of fire along with their magic stones. As for the cannon wyverns on the 58th floor, although they managed to survive by relying on their tough scales, their huge bodies were also continuously bombarded by the rain of fire javelins. They let out painful howls, and the large fireballs that were compressed in their mouths directly exploded, injuring the cannon wyverns' mouths. Ha, 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 Leafia began to pant, and her face became much paler. It was obvious that she had used up a lot of her mental strength. However, Leafia's magic, which used up almost all of her mental strength, allowed Noah and AIC's path to be unobstructed. Even the cannon wyvern's sniping was forced to stop. The result of the battle could not be said to be bad. Finn was right. Leafia was indeed very outstanding. Although she was only at LV3, her strong mental strength and the magic power that had been trained to the maximum level made the elven girl's magic power extremely shocking. Moreover, Leafia also had a skill to assist her. The skill was called Fairy Pursuit. The effect of the skill was very simple, which was to double the effect of attacking magic. The combination of the two made it so that although Leafia was only at LV3, the power of her magic was enough to threaten LV5 and LV6 first-level adventurers. Under the surprised gazes of Noah and AIC, Leafia forced a smile. I will also help the two of you, please don't forget about me. This sentence made Noah and AIC laugh. Leafia. AIC said sincerely. Thank you, well done. Noah smiled indifferently. Thanks to you, we are here. Under Noah's words, the vertical hole connecting the 57th and 58th levels was penetrated by Noah. Whoosh! In the sharp sound of the air being torn apart, Noah shot down. His body spun, and he suddenly fell madly. He suddenly kicked hard on the head of a cannon wyvern. Bang! The kick, which carried an astonishing amount of power, caused the cannon wyvern's head to explode. A large amount of minced meat and brain matter splattered everywhere. The big red dragon that had lost its head fell heavily to the ground, raising a cloud of sand. Noah carried the two girls and landed directly on the body of the cannon wyvern that had fallen to the ground dead. The whole place was suddenly silent. A few cannon wyverns widened their eyes and stared above the corpse of their companion that was covered by the sand. Their eyes flashed with ferocious light. Against the ferocious light, Noah, A's, and Leafia slowly revealed themselves amidst the flying sand. They looked at the huge red dragons with different expressions. Leafia was panting as she raised her magic wand. AIC held the thin sword in her hand tightly. Her crystal-clear eyes didn't waver at all. Noah glanced at the surroundings and then met the ferocious eyes of the huge red dragons. The corners of his mouth slowly rose. Ooh, 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 ooh. Roar, 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 roar. The cannon wyverns and the wyverns that surged out from the big hole in the ceiling surrounded Noah, AIC, and Leafia. They let out resounding roars, causing the dangerous atmosphere at the scene to suddenly rise. A battle was about to break out. On the other side, the level 1 adventurers of Loki's clan who were galloping on the 52nd floor immediately noticed the abnormality. Tiona tilted her head and said in confusion. Did the cannon fire stop? It seems so. Tiona frowned. Why did it suddenly stop? Don't tell me there's something else. Bert smacked his lips fiercely. That's enough. No, I don't think it's that. Riveria shook her head. If there's really something else, we wouldn't have been able to escape from the 58th floor in the previous expedition. Also, did you notice? Gareth looked around and said. The wyverns don't seem to have appeared either. In other words, the two biggest obstacles that prevented them from reaching the 58th floor had disappeared. My thumb also stopped trembling. It seems that the crisis is over. Finn suddenly smiled. Needless to say, it must be the doing of those three little guys. Tiona looked at Finn. In other words, Big Brother, AIC, and Leafia have taken care of the cannon wyverns and wyverns. I don't think they've taken care of them. Perhaps they've just restrained them, Finn said. That's why we have to go to the lower floors as soon as possible to support them. Should we jump in from those holes? Tiona asked. Since the cannon wyverns have stopped sniping, we don't have to worry anymore, right? No, even if the cannon wyverns stop sniping, the wyvern's threat can't be ignored. If we jump in recklessly, we might be entangled by the wyverns. That's not worth it. Finn shook his head. That's why we should take advantage of this time to hurry up and advance using the regular route. It'll be faster that way. Everyone nodded in agreement. Chapter 2046. On the 58th floor of the dungeon. It was the same terrain as the safety floor on the 18th floor. There was no maze or high wall that blocked the view. There was only a huge cavern made up of black lead-colored walls and a ceiling. The difference was that the 18th floor was circular, while the 58th floor was rectangular. Now, in this vast rectangular cavern, cannon dragons and wyverns surrounded Noah, Ace, and Leafia, who were standing on the crimson dragon's corpse from all directions. They let out a chaotic but earth-shattering chorus. The scene was almost no different from the group of dragons formed by 10,000 that Noah had once faced. In addition to the dragon species Monster King, there were all kinds of other monsters on this floor. However, under the wide area attack spell that Leafia had just expended most of her mental strength to cast, the monsters had either been reduced to ashes or were covered in wounds from the bombardment. Compared to the cannon dragons and wyverns, they were no threat at all. The dragon-shaped monsters stared at Noah, Ace, and Leafia's group with ferocious glints in their eyes. Surrounded by such a large group of dragon species monsters, Leafia gripped her magic wand so hard that her hand turned pale. Even Ace's expression became more tense than usual. She obviously felt that the situation was a little serious. There were only a few cannon dragons present, but there were countless wyverns. After all, cannon dragons only appeared on the 58th floor, while wyverns began to appear on the 55th and 56th floors. They would also build nests and continue to accumulate in numbers. With several floors being connected, the number of wyverns that gathered from each floor by relying on their flying ability was naturally staggering. In terms of level, cannon dragons were classified as level 5. Even if there were only a few of them, it was definitely not a joke. Wyverns were only at level 4, but they were recognized as the strongest king of monsters at the same level. Each of them had a combat power close to level 5. Moreover, there were so many wyverns present that it would not be strange even if there were strengthened species among them. As for the monsters that had survived Leafia's AoE attack, it was very likely that they were rare species as well. Rare species referred to rare monsters that were extremely rare and rarely appeared on each floor. Enhanced species referred to monsters that had killed other monsters and devoured their magic stones. They were enhanced monsters that were more powerful than monsters of the same species. These two types of monsters were much stronger than monsters of the same species and level. If there was a rare species among the monsters surrounding this place, then they had to be careful. If there was a strengthened mutant in the group of wyverns, they would have to be careful. Wyvern was originally the strongest existence in the LV4 level. If it was strengthened, it would be LV5. If ignored, it would be fatal for every adventurer. In addition, the red dragon was eyeing them covetously from the side, ready to open its fangs and spit out the most powerful cannon at any time. This was a fatal situation. If it weren't for the fact that she believed that the man and woman in front of her had the strength to resolve all crises, and she had the idea of doing her best to help them, Leafia really couldn't guarantee that she could continue to stand and not run away. Let's deal with the cannon dragons first. AIC raised her rapier and stared at the red dragons with her golden eyes. Their threat is the greatest. The highest floor reached by Loki's family was the 58th floor. In the past, when AIC and her party stepped onto the 52nd floor, they were directly attacked by the cannon dragons. As a result, they were caught off guard and were seriously injured. They fell onto this floor and lost all their supplies. In the end, they tried their best to escape. As a member at that time, AIC naturally understood how dangerous it was to continue to keep these cannon dragons. Of course, for Noah, it didn't matter which side he dealt with first. He could even deal with them all at once. However, at this moment, Noah's heart moved. He suddenly turned his head and looked at the rock wall at the north end of the 58th floor. There was a passage to the 57th floor. However, on that passage, countless yellow-green pieces of meat suddenly rushed in and blocked the passage. That's a new species of monster? Leafia exclaimed. AIC furrowed her brows tightly and finally revealed a troubled expression. In this situation, they still had to face a group of larvae monsters that could corrode anything. It was really terrible. Only Noah noticed that something was wrong. That's not right. Noah muttered. Those new species of monsters aren't coming for us. It's not coming for us. AIC and Rafia were stunned. Then, an unbelievable scene happened in front of the three of them. A group of larvae monsters that rushed out of the passage actually stood up on the backs of the monsters, growling at Noah and the others. They opened their mouths and spat out a large amount of corrosive liquid. The monsters did not expect to be attacked from the back by their own kind. They did not even have the time to scream before their bodies were completely corroded by the corrosive liquid. Not even their bones were left. The large group of larvae monsters wriggled their bodies as they moved forward. They continued to spit corrosive liquid at the surrounding monsters, eliminating groups of monsters one after another. Noah saw it clearly. After eliminating the other monsters, the larvae used their tentacles to dig out magic stones from the smoking corrosive liquid and put them into their mouths. Seeing this scene, Noah sighed. AIC and Leafia felt that their common sense had been challenged. No. Impossible. Leafia could not help but waver. Swallowing magic stones is something that only strengthening-type monsters would do. Could it be that all the new species of monsters are strengthening-type monsters? That was simply ridiculous. Normally, monsters would not attack other monsters. This was because monsters were all life forms that were born in the underground city. They would instinctively not attack each other. However, this was only the majority of the monsters. Under special circumstances or in special environments, some monsters would still kill each other based on the common sense of the law of the jungle. During this process, if a monster swallowed the magic stones of the monsters that it killed, it would become stronger and become a strengthening-type monster. Once the strengthening-type monster had a taste of becoming stronger, it might keep attacking other monsters and swallowing magic stones. However, this was only a small portion of the monsters. The scene in front of them was that all the larvae monsters were swallowing magic stones. An entire race of strengthening-type monsters? AIC and Leafia had never heard of such a thing. Roar, 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 roar. At this moment, the group of flying dragons, which was more numerous, finally noticed the group of larvae that were killing the monsters. They were instantly enraged. One after another, they roared and shifted their attention to the larvae monsters. In an instant, the battlefield was divided into two groups. On one side was the group of monsters formed by flying dragons and other monsters. On the other side was a group of flesh formed by larvae monsters. The two groups of monsters suddenly started killing each other just like that. The larvae monsters spat out corrosive liquid and killed the monsters one by one, continuing to collect magic stones. The group of flying dragons spat out fire bullets continuously, killing the larvae one by one, causing them to fall with smoke all over their bodies. However, every time a larval monster fell, the monster's body would suddenly expand and finally explode, causing the corrosive liquid accumulated in its body to spill out in all directions, corroding its companions into nothingness. Only the magic stones were left, which were swallowed by the larvae that were not sputtered. It can't be. This was the first time Noah had heard of this. Those new monsters can even self-destruct. The corrosive liquid that could even corrode a LV for flying dragon and self-destruct. Noah, who did not know this, was glad that he did not face the larvae before. Otherwise, Noah did not dare to guarantee that he could avoid being corroded when his body was directly hit by the corrosive liquid. Ooh, 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 ooh. When Noah, AIC, and Lephia were attracted by the chaotic battlefield in front of them, the cannon dragons also began to roar impatiently, flames rising in their mouths again. Their targets were Noah, AIC, and Lephia. Forget it. Noah made a prompt decision. Let's get rid of the cannon dragons that are the biggest threat first. Both AIC and Lephia hurriedly nodded. The battle was about to start. Chapter 2047. Release a ray of light, bough of the holy wood, thou art a famous archer. As the cannon dragons growled and bared their fangs to compress the expanding flames, Lephia subconsciously raised her wand and began to chant. A dazzling magical formation spun on the ground beneath the elven sorcerer and began to expand. It continuously refined Lephia's mental strength into magical power and slowly fluctuated. Awaken. At the same time, Ace softly chanted an incantation, causing a whirlwind to swirl around her and shroud her weapon and body. Snipe, elven archer, shoot through, arrow that will definitely hit. In the next second, amidst Lephia's melodious chant, Ace, who was shrouded in wind, rushed out and instantly got into the arms of one of the cannon dragons. The silver sword in her hand flashed and immediately left a bloody wound on the crimson cannon dragon's body. The cannon dragon howled in pain, but the murderous glint in its eyes intensified. It raised its tail and swept it in A's direction as if it was sweeping away an army of 1,000. The dragon tail, which had turned into a long whip, carried with it a piercing sound of the wind and swept out like a blurry shadow. Judging from the momentum, if A's was hit, she would still be injured even if she was protected by magic. However, that would only happen if the attack hit her. A's, who was riding the wind, had already leaped agilely and avoided the dragon tail. Her body turned into a gust of wind and flashed back and forth in front of the cannon dragon. She held onto the cannon dragon tightly while waving the thin sword in her hand, leaving wound after wound on the cannon dragon's body. Under such circumstances, the other cannon dragons seemed to want to attack A's from both sides. However, because A's was entangled in front of their companions, they didn't dare to release the large fireballs they had compressed in their mouths. In that case, regardless of whether they could hit A's, their larger companions would definitely not be able to dodge the cannon fire. In the end, not only would they fail to hurt the enemy, they would also hurt their own people. With no other choice, the cannon dragons could only let out furious roars and pounce in A's direction. Immediately, the golden-haired girl was surrounded by huge cannon dragons. However, AIC used her agility and speed to maneuver between the cannon dragons, dodging their sharp claws and heavy tails. Once she found an opportunity, she would swing her sword and slash at the monsters around her. Logically speaking, the pincer attack of several LV-5 dragon species monsters was extremely dangerous even for a LV-6 adventurer. Not to mention, dragon monsters were originally known as the strongest existence among monsters of the same level. If they besieged a LV-6, it would not take long for them to beat the opponent to death. However, from its name, it could be seen that the cannon dragon was a monster specialized in cannon attacks. As a monster that had been strengthened for the purpose of cannon attacks, the cannon dragon had the terrifying power to snipe adventurers far above the 52nd floor even if they were separated by several floors. But once the cannon fire was blocked, it would not be difficult to deal with it. Ace grasped the weakness of the cannon dragon. By entangling with one cannon dragon, the other cannon dragons were afraid to attack. This way, she beautifully blocked the cannon fire of the cannon dragon. She wandered between several cannon dragons and left sword wounds on them. The scene seemed thrilling, but in fact, the situation was more favorable to A's. That girl can almost be called superb in combat. Undoubtedly, she doesn't even know how to cook. Noah muttered like this, but he did not step forward to help. Instead, he glanced at Leafia, who was chanting a magic spell with her eyes closed next to him. When launching magic, no matter what kind of magic it was, it required extreme concentration and correct incantation to succeed. The more powerful the magic, the longer the incantation would naturally be, and the more mana the magic shooter needed to convert. However, if too much mana was injected, it would be harder to control it. If one could not control the mana, not only would the magic not be able to be launched, it might even cause the mana to explode and injure oneself. Therefore, in order to be able to launch the magic smoothly, it was necessary to concentrate on precise control of the mana. Therefore, magic shooters who specialized in magic would generally be arranged in the rear guard position, concentrating on chanting incantations and casting magic under the protection of their companions. However, there were some highly skilled magic shooters who had a way to do two things at once. While accurately controlling the mana, they could also carry out other actions. People called this technique of doing two things at once parallel chant. Riveria was the master of this superb technique. Moreover, as the most powerful magic shooter in Eulalia, Riveria's parallel chant was not just about doing two things at once, or even three things at once, but four things at once. Being able to simultaneously chant, move, dodge, and defend, even at the forefront of the battlefield, one could often see the scene of her fluttering cloak behind her back, like a fairy shuttling through a group of monsters, dancing gracefully. Thus, just like Aeth, the gods also gave Riveria the title of G. In addition, Riveria was able to use a total of 9 types of magic, so the gods called her the 9 devil concubines. Naturally, Rifia had not reached Riveria's level. Because of this, someone had to protect Leafia while she was chanting the incantation. Noah's actions allowed him to smoothly discover another anomaly. He saw that in the chaotic battlefield ahead, a group of larvae monsters that were fighting with the wyverns suddenly seemed to be stimulated by something. They trembled all over, turned their heads, and turned towards one of the directions. That direction was where Noah was. Immediately afterward, a large group of larvae wriggled their bodies while ignoring the wyvern's attack. Instead, they swarmed toward Noah as if they were going to advance toward him. Seeing this scene, Noah was surprised. What happened? As soon as his voice fell, Athena's answer rang in Noah's heart. Those monsters seem to have an overreaction to magic. The 2 little girls you brought with you are using magic now, so it's natural that they'll attract those monsters. Overreaction to magic. Noah frowned and had a guess in his heart. Could it be because of this special characteristic that these monsters attacked other monsters carrying magic stones? I'm not sure, but I did notice something else, Athena said. If you look carefully, you will find that those larvae monsters, in addition to harvesting items called magic stones, are all moving toward the south. South. Noah was slightly stunned, then turned his head and looked toward the south. There was a cave entrance. The passage to the 57th floor was in the north of this huge cavern. The passage to the 59th floor was in the south of this huge cavern. And now, the larvae monsters were all beginning to move toward the south. What did this mean? Just now, those larvae monsters also came out from the passage to the 57th floor, right? Athena said. Now, they are moving toward the passage to the 59th floor. It seems that those monsters want to go to the floors below. There must be something in the floors below that is attracting these monsters. Athena suddenly smiled. My fated one, your intuition wasn't wrong. As Athena laughed, next to Noah, the elven girl's magic burst out. Spiritual light arrow. As Leafia raised the wand in her hand high up, a huge flash of light suddenly burst out, like a thick beam of light that swept straight ahead. All the monsters in front of the flash, whether it was the wyverns, the cannon dragons, or the larvae, gradually disappeared as if they were annihilated. When the flash disappeared, there was almost nothing left on the ground except for a scorched mark. Phew, Leafia exhaled loudly, panting even more heavily than before. AIC, on the other hand, looked at Leafia in amazement, causing Leafia to feel a little giddy. Only Noah noticed. Not only did Leafia's attack not improve the situation, but it also caused the larvae that were entangled with the wyverns to turn around and swarm over. Those monsters are reacting to magic. Chapter 2048. Splat. Splat, splat, splat. As the battle in the vast cavern intensified, the ceiling of the 58th floor, which had been blasted open by the cannon dragons, started to repair itself. As the ceiling gradually repaired itself, the number of wyverns that flew out from each floor decreased. After an unknown amount of time, the ceiling that had been blasted open was completely repaired, and the wyverns on the other floors did not fill in. At the same time, the number of larvae that came out from the passageway to the 57th floor also decreased. Under such circumstances, as the battle went on, the number of wyverns and larvae decreased. In the end, the larvae that had the powerful corrosive liquid as a weapon won the battle. They swallowed the magic stones one by one, wriggled their bodies, and started to move toward the south of the cavern, entering the passageway to the 59th floor. As the last larvae entered the passageway and entered the 59th floor, the cavern became silent. After a while, at the edge of the cavern, behind a dead cannon dragon, 3 figures slowly walked out. Those monsters actually entered the floors below. Leafia held her wand and carried her backpack. She looked at the entrance to the 59th floor in disbelief. It wasn't just Leafia. Even AIC was silent. They collectively hunted monsters of other races and swallowed the magic stones. They collectively moved to the other floors. Without a doubt, this was something that went against the adventurers' understanding of the underground city. However, the larvae that could spit out corrosive liquid easily did it. Monsters that can ignore the floors they are on, and monsters that can collectively do what only the enhanced species can do. Plus, there's a huge sale of monsters across floors that rarely happens. So this is the real reason why the so-called common sense of the 50th floor and above is useless here. That's right. Noah looked around the cavern that had become a mess. After a while, he suddenly smiled. Things are getting more and more interesting. It was the right decision to come here. Compared to Noah's relieved smile, the surrounding environment was extremely miserable. There were places that were charred because of Leafia's magic. There were also places where the corrosive fluid of the larvae monster had become scorched and emitted a poisonous gas. There were also places that were full of craters because of the flying dragon's fiery bombs. There were also places where the magic stones were taken away by the larvae, and the bodies of the monsters were reduced to ashes. His appearance was as if he had been attacked by artillery. It was a horrible sight to behold. Those new monsters seemed to only be after the magic stones. The monster's loot seems to have been left behind. Noah stepped on the charred ground and counted the loot around him. Wyvern's fangs, wyvern's nails, wyvern's skin, and wyvern's skeleton. These are all valuable drops. If we collect them all, we can sell them for tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. There are no more magic stones, AIC murmured as she followed behind Noah. Only the magic stone of the cannon dragon that we killed hasn't been retrieved yet. That was why Xiao Long's corpse was still there. Only by retrieving the magic stones would the monster's corpse turn into ashes. Otherwise, it would be no different from a human and leave behind a corpse. Then let's go retrieve it. Noah shrugged. Otherwise, we've been hiding for so long. It's a little boring. When he noticed that the larvae monsters would target magic stones and magic stones, Noah stopped Leafia, who was planning to continue using magic. He even called back AIC, who had killed a few cannon dragons, and brought the 2 girls to hide. Without magic stones as a trigger, the larvae monsters targeted the monsters on this floor. They helped Noah, AIC, and Leafia to clear out the monster horde that could be considered an army of thousands. Noah and the rest reaped the benefits. Although the magic stones would be taken away, the larvae monsters did not target the loot. This batch of Varus loot, which was worth hundreds of millions, went into Noah, AIC, and Leafia's pockets. But, are we going to start collecting the loot now? Leafia asked, a little surprised. The loot here is very big. It takes up a lot of space in the backpack, right? Hearing that, Noah looked at Leafia with a half-smile, reminding her. With the tool called the gift card, Noah did not need to worry about the capacity and weight of the items he carried. Moreover, compared to this, shouldn't you be more worried about yourself? Noah sighed as if he saw through Leafia's stubbornness. You've used a few powerful spells. You must have used up a lot of your mental strength. It's best to replenish it first, right? Ugh. Leafia groaned as if she had been poked in a sore spot. This elven girl had always thought that it would be better to leave the precious items for the first-level adventurers to use instead of using them herself. That would be more beneficial for the upcoming exploration, right? However, this idea was obviously a dead end for Leafia. At this point, you should have realized that your magic can also play a role in the strategy this time, right? Noah said bluntly. You've been going down a dead end and causing your mental strength to be in a state of great depletion. When you're really needed later on, you can't even use a single spell. That will really be a burden. Are you willing to see that? Noah's words once again poked at Leafia's sore spot, dragging him down. That was something that Leafia could not allow herself to do. It's not just Leafia. Ace also needs to replenish. You've also used up a lot of your stamina and mental strength in the battle just now, Noah said in a tone that did not allow for any exceptions. Don't worry about not having enough recovery items. Finn is well prepared. There are still a lot of items in my gift card. You don't have to be so stingy for your own clan members. Upon hearing Noah's words, Ace and Leafia lowered their heads as though they were too ashamed to lift their heads. In the end, the two young ladies obediently took out spiritual potions to replenish their stamina and mental strength from their backpacks and started replenishing themselves. Meanwhile, Noah listened attentively to Athena and Draeger's words. I didn't expect the underground city to be able to nurture the dragon race, Draeger said in disbelief. If Erubian were to witness this scene, he would definitely be shocked, right? Although nurturing life is the instinct of every race, what the underground city has done is equivalent to creating life, Athena said thoughtfully. That's the territory of God. It seemed that Athena and Draeger had their own thoughts after witnessing the incredible underground city with their own eyes. On the other hand, Aster didn't seem to be interested in it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have remained silent. As for Orpheus and Lilith, they must be hiding in their gift cards and observing silently, right? At this thought, Noah looked towards the entrance of the passage in the south of the cavern again, feeling a little restless. Should I go in and take a look? When Noah had such an idea, at the entrance of the passage at the north end, the first-level adventurers of Loki's clan finally arrived late. Ace. Leafia. Tiona immediately pounced over and hugged Ace and Leafia. Are you all right? Tyogni also came over. After sizing up AIC and Leafia, he heaved a sigh of relief. Finn, Riveria, and Garrett's expressions also relaxed. They looked towards Noah and exchanged glances with Noah. Then, they looked at the messy surroundings and immediately understood what had happened. Only Bert crossed his arms and glanced at Noah, Ace, and Leafia before speaking softly. What a nuisance, I'm sorry. Leafia stepped forward and bowed to everyone. It's all my fault. You were indeed negligent. You shouldn't have let your guard down even during the replenishment period. Finn shook his head. However, you were in the middle of the group and were protected by us. We allowed the monsters to break through the protective circle and attack you, causing you to be hit by the cannons. If not for Draeger, we would have lost a comrade. This is also our negligence. Everyone has to reflect on it. Everyone immediately lowered their heads. Chapter 2049. From the 50th floor all the way to the 58th floor, it should have only been about half a day, right? However, in just half a day, the danger was very obvious. Especially when they encountered the cannon dragon's attack on the 52nd floor. Even though the group of Loki's clan had experienced it once before, there was still an accident. Just like what Finn said, everyone was at fault. Rifia shouldn't have let down her guard during the resupply period. The group of level 1 adventurers shouldn't have overlooked the threat of the monsters hiding in the shadows on the 52nd floor because of the cannon dragon's attack. If it wasn't for Noah saving Rifia, then this young elven girl might have really died in the mouth of the monster. Thinking of this, the level 1 adventurers all fell into silence, and Rifia was a little at a loss. Under such circumstances, it was Noah who mentioned it intentionally or unintentionally. Although the 58th floor has stopped producing monsters now, this is still the monster's nest. Next, we still have to enter the 59th floor of the unreached area. Let's not waste time blaming ourselves. If you want to reflect, wait until we return to the clan to have a reflection meeting. Saying this, Noah sized up Finn's group. Also, you have to hurry up and resupply, right? Seeing Noah sizing up Finn's group, Ace and Rifia noticed. Compared to their own group, Finn's group was in a very bad state. Finn and Bert's bodies were covered in scorch marks, and part of Gareth's armor was cracked. Tiona and Tyogni's brown skin had wounds oozing with blood, and even Riveria's outfit was a little messy. Obviously, in order to reach the 58th floor, Finn's group had fought a lot along the way. Fortunately, you threw the backpack to me before falling here. Gareth let out a rare bitter laugh. If it wasn't for the recovery items inside, we might not have made it here. Not only did we encounter a group of wyverns, but we also fought with a new type of monster, Riveria said. Although we've made sufficient preparations, if we don't have items to resupply, it's really dangerous. Thanks to this, we ended up like this, Tioni said helplessly. I used up all my items not too long ago. These are all accumulated. So, hurry up and give us some panacea, Tiona said weakly. Otherwise, we'll really die. That's it. Bo-Tay curled his lips. Hurry up and take out the items. We need to replenish our supplies. I understand. Leafia hurriedly opened the backpack on her back and took out bottles of elixirs, which she distributed to everyone. After consuming a few bottles of the highest quality panacea, the injuries of the group of level 1 adventurers gradually began to improve. Then, Leafia took out a high-grade magic medicine and handed it to Riveria. Come to think of it, Riveria should have consumed a lot of spirit power along the way. While everyone was replenishing their supplies, Finn was looking at the entrance to the south with a smile on his childlike face. The 59th level, we're finally reaching it. Hearing this, everyone revealed smiles one after another, letting their excitement replace their self-blame. The arrival of the unreached level would prove that Loki's spawn was one of Eulalia's most powerful spawn. After all, that level was only reached by Zeus's spawn who had climbed to the peak. Entering that floor meant that Loki's clan had finally caught up with the footsteps of the clan that was once known as the strongest in the dungeon's exploration. This was undoubtedly a kind of glory for Loki's spawn. In response, Noah, AIC, and Leafia looked at each other. What's wrong? Finn asked directly when he sensed the abnormality in the three. Is there something wrong? Noah and AIC did not speak. Instead, they turned their gazes to Leafia. Leafia hesitated for a moment. Then, she told Finn and the others about the strange things they encountered on this floor one by one. What? Both Tiona and Tioni were shocked. Those new monsters are all strengthened species that can consume magic stones. You're kidding, right? Bert's eyes became fierce. I've never heard of an entire race of enhancers. Riveria and Gareth also furrowed their brows tightly. My thumb is tingling, which tells me that this is definitely not a normal thing. Finn narrowed his eyes and looked at AIC. And then? Did those new monsters enter the 59th level? Yes, AIC nodded and said softly. I wanted to chase after them, but Noah didn't let me. Of course he won't let you go, Noah said in annoyance. Who knows what's on the 59th level? And what if Finn and the others came right after you left? That's right, Finn agreed. We were attacked by the cannon dragon on the 58th level on the 52nd level. The levels below must be even more dangerous. AIC, even if you once killed a LV, 6th floor master alone, I won't let you do whatever you want. AIC suddenly became dejected. Of course, AIC didn't know that the reason why Noah didn't let her go was actually because he had a little plan. That was to let AIC and Leafia stay here and wait for Finn and the others, then he would go in. Unfortunately, before this little plan could be implemented, Finn and the others rushed over. However, we must be prepared to fight the army of new monsters on the 59th level, Finn said. Although I don't know if those new monsters will continue to go down, it's never wrong to be careful. Finn's words made Tiona and Tiorn's face bitter. Do we have to fight those disgusting monsters again? Please, spare me. Not only can those guys spray corrosive liquid, they can also self-destruct. Every time I kill them, I have to dodge them in a hurry. In the end, I still get hit by the splash a few times. I don't have AIC's magic to deflect the corrosive liquid with wind. While Tiona and Tiorn were complaining, Bert was also smacking his lips. Riveria and Garrett's brows were furrowed deeper and deeper, obviously feeling that the situation was getting more and more troublesome. After all, in the last expedition, they couldn't even step into the 52nd level. All of their weapons were dissolved by the larva-type monsters wandering on the 51st level. In the end, they had no choice but to retreat. Now, the 59th level was right in front of them. The monsters that caused them to fail in the last expedition might also be there, so they couldn't help but feel troubled. Hey, Noah, Finn pondered for a moment and then asked. How many magic swords do you still have? About 7 or 8. Noah replied. You've acquired a total of 35 magic swords. Half of them are in the camp for the people in the clan to use. As for the remaining half, some are in the gift card and some are in the backpack. Looking at you guys, the magic swords in the backpack that I left for you should have been used. That's all that's left. 7 or 8. Finn frowned. The situation is a little grim. Finn and the others weren't afraid of the new monster's combat power, but their corrosive liquid. If it was just a spray, it would be fine. The worst thing was that the monsters would self-destruct if they were killed. In this way, close combat would be a lot more dangerous. If there's no other way, then let Riveria and Leafia use magic to deal with the new monsters, Gareth said. Moreover, Riveria also knows how to use defensive magic. With defensive magic, we can be at ease. That's the only way. Finn sighed and then looked at Noah with a serious expression. If it's really necessary, then just do it. Don't worry about us anymore. Noah raised an eyebrow. It seemed that Finn had seen through his plan. Bert, who didn't know what was going on, spoke in disdain. If relying on those small fries was useful, we wouldn't have had to run away the last few times. Shut up. Tiona and Tiona immediately covered Bert's mouth, causing him to struggle madly. The others all looked at Noah. Under everyone's gaze, Noah finally sighed. I understand. Only then did everyone laugh. Chapter 2050. About half an hour later, the group of Loki's family members arrived at the southern end of the huge cavern. Standing in front of the pitch-black tunnel, everyone looked at each other before finally focusing their gazes on Finn. Under the gazes of everyone present, Finn stared at the entrance of the passageway in front of him. He licked his thumb with a thoughtful expression on his face as he muttered to himself. It's a little strange. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. What's wrong? Noah did not care about anything and asked directly. What's strange about it? I've read the records left by Zeus family members. There's a record of the 59th floor. Finn did not turn around and said directly. According to the records, the terrain of the 59th floor is no longer a labyrinth like the Dragon Pot, but a glacial zone with extremely low temperature. Glacial zone. Noah was surprised. No wonder you gave me so many protective equipment with fire essence protection. So it was to guard against this. That's right. Finn nodded. According to the records, there are glaciers everywhere on the 59th floor. It's extremely difficult to move forward and there's also an unimaginably low temperature. Even a LV-5 level 1 adventurer will be frozen stiff and their body will become sluggish. They can barely exert 70% of their combat strength. As for those below LV-5, there's a possibility that they will be frozen into ice directly. As soon as these words came out, Leafia, who was only LV-3, turned pale. Noah, on the other hand, frowned and looked at the tunnel in front of them. If the 59th floor is really that cold, then it's impossible that we didn't feel a little cold standing in front of the tunnel, right? That's why I think it's a little strange. Finn touched his chin. Could it be that the influx of those new monsters caused some changes on the 59th floor? Not necessarily. Noah shook his head. Maybe the environment on the 59th floor itself will change. The environment itself will change. Tiona blinked. Is that even possible? That's impossible, right? Tiona said doubtfully. I've never heard of any floor's environment changing. Nothing is impossible. Noah shrugged. Even the ability to ignore floors has appeared, an entire race of enhancers, and monsters that move to other floors have appeared. With so many unbelievable things happening, what else is impossible? Both Tiona and Tiorn were speechless. You're right. Riveria closed her eyes. We're the ones who keep saying that common sense above the 50th floor is useless here. That's right. Gareth lifted his battle axe and said the same thing. In this way, no matter how inconceivable it is, it wouldn't be strange. Everyone fell silent. However, not long after, a rough voice interrupted everyone's silence. What's the point of thinking so much? Bote coldly snorted and directly said. Either you go down or scram. We're already here. Is there a third choice? His words were crude, but his reasoning was not. Bert's statement was indeed correct. However, Noah said so. It's not that there's no third choice. Ha! Everyone was stunned. Under everyone's stunned gaze, Noah curled his lips and smiled. We can also learn from those cannon dragons and directly blast open the vertical hole leading to the 59th floor on the 58th floor. That way, we can at least peek at the movements of the floors below and decide whether to go down or not. As soon as this statement came out, everyone was speechless. Is your brain filled with boiling water? Bote couldn't help but yell. Do you think it's so easy to open a hole between floors? Even the magic of an old lady can't do that, right? I can't guarantee that I can do it. Riveria opened her eyes. She seemed to be very dissatisfied with Bote calling her an old lady, but her serious personality made her answer honestly. The cannon dragon is a monster specialized in cannon fire, so the power of the cannon fire is amazing. In terms of firepower alone, I shouldn't be able to compete with the cannon dragon. As she said this, Riveria's tone suddenly changed. However, if it's Noah Doria, he should be able to do it, right? That one sentence made everyone reveal a somewhat strange expression. TSK Bote made a very explicit sound of disgust and spoke in a very displeased manner. Why are you mentioning that bastard? What? Are you jealous again? Tiona giggled and teased. Because you can't do something that little brother Noah can do, so you're upset. It's none of your business. Bote looked as if his tail had been stepped on and exploded. Continue playing with your big double-edged sword. Don't talk too much. Bote's stampeding appearance immediately made everyone laugh. Only Leafia stared at Noah with eyes full of resentment. This caused Noah to feel a chill down his spine and he muttered in his heart. Did I offend you again? Just as the atmosphere between them started to relax, IC stared at the entrance of the passageway in front of her, looking as though she had lost her soul. Noah was the first to notice the abnormality of this girl who was usually silent and kept her presence to a minimum. He asked in confusion. What's wrong? AIC glanced at Noah and continued to stare at the tunnel in front of her. Her eyes began to ripple. Then, AIC clutched her chest and muttered in confusion. There's a very strange feeling, a very strange feeling. What kind of feeling is that? When this thought flashed through Noah's mind, two voices that only he could hear suddenly sounded. Master. Aster suddenly spoke. I also have a strange feeling. The same goes for this concubine, Athena suddenly spoke up as well. It feels like there's something familiar yet strange in front of this tunnel. To be more precise, it should be below. Hearing Aster and Athena's voices, Noah raised his eyebrows and finally looked at the tunnel in front of him. Noah's intuition told him. In front of this tunnel, there was the answer to the puzzle that appeared after entering the 51st floor. The reason for the emergence of the strange larvae monster might be in front of him. Understanding this, Noah closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they had turned into calmness. Finn. Noah suddenly said. Let's move forward. Finn turned his head and looked at Noah. After seeing Noah's calm expression, he nodded. Our goal is the 59th floor. Finn smiled. Since we're already here, there's no reason to retreat. Finn then raised his hand. Let's go. Okay. Everyone responded loudly. Only AIC was still in a daze. She seemed to be very concerned about the strange feeling that suddenly appeared in her heart. Under such circumstances, a hand suddenly rested on AIC's head. AIC was suddenly startled and turned her head. Don't think too much. Noah met AIC's gaze and said. I'm here. Hearing such a short sentence that gave her a sense of security, AIC's heart unbelievably calmed down. The group of people exchanged glances with each other. Soon after, they suddenly charged forward. This was an equally huge cavern. The scale was more magnificent than the 58th floor directly above. The direction of vision also gave a feeling that it was more spacious than the 58th floor. Inside the huge cave, a lush green forest almost filled the entire space. On the ground, there was a verdant grassland, and there were many colorful flowers. The environment could not be described as not beautiful. At the edge of this sealed cavern, on the surrounding rock walls, vines hung all over the high walls, forming a green wall. On top of the wall, countless flower buds of various sizes hung down like silkworm cocoons. It gave the illusion that something was growing inside. This is the 59th floor. In the passage that connected to the 58th floor, Tiona and Tiorn looked at the vibrant scene in front of them, dumbfounded. Finn. Bert said in a doubtful tone. Are you sure this is the ice river zone? Finn did not answer. Instead, he frowned and fell into a deep thought. Noah, on the other hand, noticed another scene. Chapter 2051. When the adventurers of Loki's clan were stunned by the environment in front of them, Noah suddenly stepped forward, came to the only road in the dense forest, and squatted down. Noah's action immediately attracted everyone's attention. Only then did the three leaders, Finn, Riveria, and Gareth, discover it. On the forest road where Noah squatted down, there was some viscous purple-black liquid. This is... Riveria's eyes slowly narrowed. The corrosive liquid of the larvae-type monster. No, it's not corrosive liquid, it should be body fluid. Finn came to Noah's side and squatted down as well. After looking at the viscous liquid on the ground, he made such a judgment. It seems that those larvae-type monsters really came to this floor and went forward along the forest road, heading somewhere. If one looked carefully, they would be able to find it. On the only forest road that was opened up, there was a lot of viscous purple-black liquid. The purple-black liquid formed a long drag mark, spreading along the forest road. Therefore, Finn's speculation was 100% convincing. Regardless of the new type of monster, there seems to be no trace of other monsters anywhere here. Gareth carried the battle axe, looked around, and frowned. Could it be that the larvae-type monsters took the magic stones and killed them all? No one could answer this question. Everyone could only be silent one after another, looking at each other, completely not knowing how to react. The 59th floor of the underground city. Stepping into this floor, Loki's clan officially updated their arrival floor record. For this, everyone was ready to fight to the death. As a result, after stepping into this floor, not only did they not encounter a single monster, but even the environment was very different from the records left by Zeus's clan. As the saying goes, there must be something wrong when things are abnormal. Such a strange situation made everyone's heart unable to relax at all. Instead, it tightened. Finn closed his eyes. After a while, he cast his gaze on Noah. What do you think? What else can I think? It must be unusual, right? Noah's tone was rather relaxed. No matter what, if we continue to move forward, we will definitely be able to obtain an answer. This is my opinion. Therefore, there is no need to change our approach. Finn smiled and stood up. He pulled out the spear on his back and pointed it at the forest in front of him. Comrades, let's continue forward. Everyone nodded in agreement. And so, with Tiona and Tyan in the lead, the party advanced along the single path in a formation no different from before. The surroundings were eerily quiet. The silence did not match the dungeon at all, causing Leafia's hand to tremble as she held on to her magic wand. She was obviously extremely nervous. At the side, Noah constantly surveyed the surroundings, his brows tightly knitted together. Although nothing was happening at the moment, Noah, with his sharp senses, could still sense that the atmosphere in the air was a little strange. The more they moved forward, the more they felt as though they were stepping into a quagmire. The extremely sticky air made Noah's pitch-black eyes flicker slightly, and he couldn't help but quicken his pace. As he quickened his pace, everyone also unknowingly quickened their pace along with Noah and passed through the forest. Not long after, the monotonous trees and the surroundings began to disappear, and the field of vision in front of them widened. Noah and the rest walked out of the forest and stepped into a gray land. Looking at the vast wilderness in front of them, they were all speechless. Pitter-patter. Pitter-patter, amidst the sounds of viscous objects squeezing each other, countless yellow-green meatballs gathered together in the endless gray wilderness in front of them, covering the entire land. A dense group of larva-like monsters wriggled their bodies while surrounding a massive object, as though they were the subjects of a king. Their elastic but disgusting bodies wriggled up and down, making one shudder in fear. And the massive object that was surrounded by a large group of larva-like monsters was a creature that made one doubt their own eyes. It had beautiful and lustrous long hair draped over its back. It had slender arms, a graceful figure, and a goddess-like appearance. Its body was covered with a colorful coat, but its skin was as green as a plant. Although it had a beauty that could take one's breath away, it didn't have any life, just like a doll. Although the skin color was a little strange, there was no doubt that it was an extremely beautiful girl. However, such a beautiful girl, only the upper body belonged to the category of human, but the lower body was a real monster. It was a lower body made up of huge petals and countless tentacles. With a goddess-like upper body and a monster-like lower body, the massive object that was beautiful and ugly, sacred and evil stood in the middle of a group of larva-like monsters, as if it had fallen into a deep sleep. Its body was wrapped in vines, and its eyes were tightly closed, looking very peaceful. However, during its sleep, the countless tentacles on the lower body of the behemoth kept wriggling, reaching out to the surrounding larva-like monsters. Whenever the tentacle reached in front of a larva-like monster, the larva-like monster would open its mouth. Then, the tentacle would directly drill into the larva-like monster's mouth, and after a while, it would pull out a magic stone. That was undoubtedly the magic stone of the larva-like monster. After losing the magic stone equivalent to life and soul, the larva-like monsters whose magic stones were taken away immediately turned into ashes and piled up on the ground. And those magic stones were stuffed by the tentacles into the petal-like lower body. There, a big mouth covered with mucus and fangs opened like a man-eating flower, constantly swallowing the magic stones that were stuffed over. The scene beyond everyone's imagination made everyone in Loki's clan fall into a state of shock, and they couldn't recover for a long time. I finally understand. Noah sighed. I understand why those larva-like monsters are like strengtheners, plundering the magic stones of other monsters, and why they collectively migrate to other floors. Unfortunately, I also understand. Finn took a deep breath and stared straight ahead. The larva-like monsters will plunder the magic stones of other monsters, not because they are all strengtheners, but because there are other existences controlling them, letting them go to other floors to plunder magic stones, and then return here to contribute the strengthened magic stones to the controller. This was the reason why the larva-like monsters would collectively plunder the magic stones of other monsters, and why the larva-like monsters would collectively migrate to other floors. In the final analysis, it was not because the larva-like monsters were all beyond common sense, but because there was an existence beyond common sense controlling them. That was the behemoth that was surrounded by the larva-like monsters. A female monster that was different from the larva-like monsters, but was controlling the larva-like monsters. Seeing the large group of larva-like monsters constantly contributing the strengthened magic stones to the female monster, everyone shuddered. That monster, has it been devouring the strengthened magic stones with this efficiency all the time? Tiona's lips were a little pale. Then how powerful did it get? Does it even need to be said? Tiona bit her lip, stared fiercely at the behemoth of the female monster, and said so. If there is a floor master on the 59th floor, then it's her. The cannon dragon on the 58th floor was as high as LV5. The female monster that occupied the 59th floor, according to the calculation method of the floor master, was 2 levels higher than the monsters on this floor. In other words, the female monster was at least LV7 floor master. It might even be higher than that. Just when everyone understood the meaning behind this, AIC stared blankly at the female monster. She suddenly shook her head as if she had lost her soul. No. AIC's strange behavior attracted everyone's attention. However, before the crowd could react, AIC abruptly spoke. Quick! Let's go! This sentence was greeted by the 2 sword spirits that only Noah could hear. No! It's too late. As soon as the voice fell, a shocking sense of horror suddenly descended. Chapter 2052. At this moment, everyone, including Noah, raised their heads abruptly and focused their gazes in front of them. Then, everyone saw it. In the vast wilderness covered in grayish-black ashes, the female monster that had been devouring the magic stones of the larvae abruptly stopped. Immediately after, the upper body of the female monster that was wrapped in vines suddenly trembled. Under the gaze of everyone present, she slowly raised her head and opened her eyes. What kind of eyes were they? There were no pupils. There was no iris. He did not have the slightest bit of vigor that an intelligent creature should have. That was the pair of eyes the female monster had when she opened her eyes. With such a pair of eyes, the beautiful face of the female monster suddenly burst into a smile. In the next second, cries that sounded like the cries of a baby rang out throughout the entire world. It was as if the cries had turned into invisible sound waves, shaking up everything in the surroundings. That voice had the beauty of a ballad, but it also had the ugliness of a howl. It was filled with a holy aura, but it also gave off a filthy feeling. It was very contradictory. And it was this incomparably contradictory cry that turned into the most ear-piercing shriek in the world, transmitted into the ears of everyone present. Ah! Tiona, Tiny, and Leafia immediately let out sorrowful cries. Ha! Finn, Riveria, Gareth, and Bert involuntarily covered their ears and squeezed out a groan from their throats. The ear-piercing screams were like invisible sharp weapons, constantly stabbing at the adventurers of Loki's clan, making everyone unable to help but show uncomfortable expressions. Only Noah and AIC stared at the shrieking female monster. Their expressions changed abruptly. AIC's expression changed abruptly because even though the shriek didn't make her feel uncomfortable, it made her blood flow faster and her heart beat faster. That reaction was as if it was resonating with the woman's voice. AIC could no longer maintain her usual calmness and fell into an uncontrollable state. As for Noah, the reason why his expression changed was because of Aster's words. Master. Aster's voice resounded in Noah's heart. Those are immortal essences. Immortal spirit. Was that an immortal spirit? Looking at the female monster who had the upper body of a goddess and the lower body of a monster, Noah was almost subconsciously speechless. She had the two elements of beauty and ugliness, holiness and evil. Could such a monster be an immortal? What kind of joke was this? Immortal spirits were the avatars of gods. In the era where the gods had yet to descend, the duty of the fairies was to listen to the voices of the gods in the heavenly realm, accept the will of the gods, find the heroes of the lower realm, assist and help them, and crusade against all the sins and evil in the world. To put it bluntly, the fairies were the predecessor of the grace bestowed by the gods to the people of the lower realm. In the era where the gods had yet to descend and the humans of the lower realm had yet to receive the grace of the gods, the fairies were the ones who bestowed the humans with power, magic, and even transformed into weapons, giving birth to the existence of heroes. That kind of existence was the thing in front of him that was neither human nor strange. I know you don't want to believe it, but it should be the truth. Athena seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts and said, You said before that the fairies of this world and the elemental fairies of the elemental fairies have the same effect and can be categorized as the same existence. If the woman in front of us is really an immortal spirit, then it can explain why I and the Holy Sword fairies felt a familiar yet unfamiliar aura. But the fairy in front of us is no longer pure. Aster said with a very unique and emotionless voice. The monsters of this world can increase their power by devouring magic stones and become the so-called enhanced species. Then, it is very likely that in the past, a fairy was devoured by a monster and fell into depravity and madness, just like the magical fairies of the elemental fairies. The filthy fairy. That was the true identity of the woman in front of him. He didn't expect such a monster to appear in the buried city. Athena suddenly said, You're right. You're right. You're right. After a monster swallows a magic stone, it will become a strengthened species. In order to pursue greater power, it will continue to attack other monsters. Then, after swallowing a fairy essence and obtaining the power of the fairy essence, what will a monster become after swallowing a fairy essence? Noah understood the meaning of her words almost instantly. Just like how your two contracted fairies can sense each other's existence, the other party should also be able to sense the existence of your two contracted fairies, right? Drake explained Noah's situation. You're being watched, partner. With that, the female monster turned her head and stared at Noah. No. To be more precise, she was staring at Noah and AIC. Soon after, the female body cried out in joy as she let out a pleasant voice. Can't find you guys. All of a sudden, apart from Noah, everyone present felt as if their hearts were being squeezed tightly by an invisible hand. Their eyes suddenly widened. The sense of terror in the air suddenly reached its peak. Noah's eyes narrowed and he suddenly shouted, "Disperse!" Everyone present shuddered at the same time. Immediately after, apart from Leafia who did not have time to react and was hugged by Noah, the rest of the first-level adventurers all scattered at an alarming speed as though they were conditioned reflexes. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Almost at the same time, a series of sharp air-piercing sounds were heard in the sky. It was the sound of the filthy immortal fairy's tentacles turning into spears that pierced through the air and shot down like raindrops. The countless tentacles shrouded down like a torrential downpour and landed heavily on the spot where Noah and the others were a second ago. Bang 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 bang. A series of explosive sounds rang out. The tentacles that had turned into long spears that descended from the sky carried a terrifying power. They suddenly shattered the ground and pierced through the rock plates, setting off a violent gust of wind. Mixed with a large amount of sand, they shook in all directions. A terrifying shockwave swept out, causing the people who had scattered out of reflex to be affected. One by one, they were blown away, smashing heavily onto the ground. After rolling a few times, they flipped over and jumped up. Noah, who was protecting Leafia, was also affected by the violent shock wave. However, he relaxed his body and drifted away like a lone boat that met a huge wave. He only landed on the ground when the shock wave stopped expanding. As a result, apart from Noah and Leafia, the rest of the first-rank adventurers were reduced to such a sorry state in a single encounter. Haha, haha, haha haha. The female monster seemed to be amused by the sorry state of AIC and the others. Like an innocent little girl, she let out a bell-like laughter. With such laughter, the filthy immortal fairy glanced at Noah and then at AIC and shouted excitedly, "Eat, you, them." Athena's words hit the bull's-eye. The filthy immortal fairy really intended to eat Aster and Athena. Perhaps the reason why the filthy immortal fairy suddenly woke up was because she sensed Aster and Athena, who were almost the same kind of immortal fairy. Noah had been targeted. And it wasn't just Noah. Even AIC had been targeted. The sense of terror that permeated the air increased once again. AIC looked at the filthy immortal fairy with eyes that had never wavered before. Why, seeing AIC's abnormal behavior, Tiona, Leafia, and Bert didn't think much of it. However, Finn, Riveria, and Gareth seemed to know something and gritted their teeth. The female immortal fairy turned her gaze and stared at AIC, smiling happily. "Here. Become one with me." After saying that, countless tentacles once again turned into a violent storm. Like a deadly poisonous net, they fell from the sky and enveloped the area. Chapter 2053. Bang! In the middle of the vast cave, in a grey wilderness, a terrifying shockwave violently shook the surroundings following the sound of an explosion. Like a typhoon, it blew through the forest, causing the trees to sway wildly. In the center of the shock wave, the first-level adventurers of Loki's clan were dodging the thick tentacles falling from the sky in a sorry state. Every place they stood was smashed by the tentacles with terrifying power, shattering one piece after another. Suddenly, in the vast wilderness, the roar of the tentacles smashing the ground reverberated endlessly, like thunder falling on the ground, extremely shocking people's eyes. All the first-level adventurers of Loki's clan desperately dodged. It was not easy for them to stabilize their bodies. Relying on their LV5 and LV6 ability values, they barely dodged all the attacks. During this period, the gigantic female monster had been letting out cheerful and pleasant laughter. She didn't show any mercy when she attacked. Her thick tentacles seemed to have turned into cannonballs at this very moment, constantly bombarding the surroundings, stirring up waves of impact and sand. That expression was simply like a playful girl playing with water. Perhaps, for that filthy fairy, the battle in front of her was actually no different from playing around. Under such circumstances, the first-level adventurers of Loki's clan found it more and more difficult to dodge. Everyone. Being held in Noah's arms, Leafia, who could smoothly avoid the bombardment of the storm without any effort, looked at her companions who were in danger and could not help but cry out anxiously. Noah held Leafia tightly in his arms, while dodging the whip shadows of the tentacles that attacked fiercely, while looking at the group of Loki's clan members who were finding it more and more difficult to dodge. His empty hand slowly clenched, and traces of magic fluctuations emerged on it. "What's wrong?" Drake spoke. "Are you going to make a move?" Hearing this, Noah hesitated for a moment. After a while, he actually dispersed the magic power gathered and whispered such a sentence. "Wait a little longer. They haven't reached their limits yet." "Is that so?" Drake said noncommittally. "You treat those people really well." "Not bad." "Is it not bad to leave him in the lurch?" If it were another situation, he definitely wouldn't say that. However, if Noah did not make a move here, it was indeed not bad. In the dungeon, there was an unwritten rule. That is, you can't take the prey of others without permission. The monsters that adventurers dealt with were not only a source of wealth, but also factors that could make them stronger. After all, the adventurers who received the favor needed to kill monsters to gain experience points, which could be used to strengthen their ability points. The reason why Noah hadn't made a move all this time and took the initiative to kill the enemy was because killing monsters didn't benefit him at all. However, for the people of Loki's clan, it was a period of experience points that could make them stronger. Leaving all the monsters to AIC's group to deal with would allow them to reap the best rewards. If all of them were to be dealt with by Noah, it would be harming others without benefiting himself. It was precisely because he saw through Noah's thoughts that Finn told Noah before that if it was really necessary, then don't worry about them and just make a move. Now, in the face of the current world's peak monsters whose strength was enough to surpass LV7, the adventurers of Loki's clan were already forced into a dead end. However, Noah still thought that it was not the time to make a move yet. When Finn and the others reached their limits, the experience points would be the most precious. Thinking of this, Noah still decided not to make a move and wait for a while. With this observation, before the adventurers of Loki's clan had time to erupt, the Immortal of Filth took the initiative to erupt. "Fire, come!" With such a light and pleasant voice, a huge magic circle suddenly unfolded in front of the Immortal of Filth. What? Seeing this scene, everyone of Loki's clan was shocked. Impossible! Leafia also exclaimed in shock. What did they see? They saw that the monster was using magic. How? How is this possible? Riveria showed a rare look of shock. How can a brutal monster that follows its instincts cast a spell that requires a focused mind to control the reins of magic and chant the spell? Magic was the power of knowledge. This was a famous saying that the people of this world recognized. Whether it was the chanting of spells or the control of magic, it was inseparable from the support of knowledge. Therefore, mastering magic had always been a privilege of the people of the lower realm, and there had never been a monster that could use magic. However, the immortal of filth in front of them seemed to want to subvert everyone's understanding, and with a pleasant voice, it kept chanting. What's more, it was an extraordinary singing. Roar, roar, fire vortex, red lotus cliff, roar of karmic fire, borrow the power of the sudden strong wind, seal the world, burning sky, burning earth, burning ocean, burning spring, burning mountain, burning life, turn everything into scorched earth, fire the cannon of anger and sigh, pay the price with the life of my beloved hero. The immortal of filth's voice seemed to be singing, and it fluently chanted long paragraphs of incantation, causing everyone in Loki's clan to be shocked. There were two reasons for the shock. One was the incantation that the immortal of filth was chanting. That was obviously a chant for a super long text. Using such a long incantation to release magic, the power was definitely shocking. At least, although Riveria's magic also had a long chant, the scale was not as big as the immortal of filth's. In addition, the immortal of filth's chanting speed was shockingly fast. Even Riveria needed a long time to chant the incantation, but the filthy immortal used less than 3 seconds to chant the large number of incantations. This made everyone realize something. Death was coming. Riveria. Finn's voice lost its calm for the first time. Open the barrier. No. Riveria also lost her composure and shouted loudly. It's too late. Hearing this, Tiona and Tiorn showed a frightened expression. In the name of the Executor, the name given to me is Flame Essence, Incarnation of Flames, Queen of Flames. In the next moment, the immortal of filth finished the last syllable of the incantation, and a terrifying magic power rose from her body. No. Leafia's pretty face turned pale. Damn it. Bert growled. This is too much of a joke. Garrett's lips trembled. Under such circumstances, the female monster abruptly smiled and softly chanted the true name of the super-long chant spell. Firestorm. Fiery red color dyed the entire world. Boom. Accompanied by a violent explosion, a terrifying flame burst out from the magic array in front of the immortal of filth. It turned into a red storm that swept out with shocking heat. The fiery red high-temperature storm almost became a tornado that reached the ceiling of the cave and shook in all directions like the explosion of a star. The gray earth was burned to ashes. The forest in the distance spontaneously combusted. Under the expansion of the red storm, an unimaginably high temperature rushed toward the level 1 adventurers of Loki's clan like a heatwave, and everyone stood rooted to the ground in a daze. Soon after, a violent firestorm swept over as if it was the end of the world. It's over, no one knew who murmured this. However, almost at the same time, a figure dashed out. Instead of retreating, she rushed toward the terrifying firestorm and reached out her hand. Clang! A dazzling white light suddenly bloomed. One hand held a sword, and the other hand shone with a dazzling white light. AIC suddenly charged out. Her crystal-clear eyes were filled with determination as she faced the terrifying storm of flames. In the next moment, the dazzling white light and the violent firestorm collided. Boom! An astonishing boom resounded, shattering the surrounding rock walls of the vast cavern. The white light and the firestorm collided in the center of the cave, illuminating the surroundings. Chapter 2054. Woo 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 woo. In front of the raging waves of flames, AIC raised her hand that was shining with a dazzling white light. She continuously refined her mental strength, causing the brilliant white light to become more and more dazzling. Gradually, it covered the surrounding fiery red color. AIC. Seeing that Ace was able to withstand the destructive firestorm alone, the Grade 1 adventurers of the Loki clan finally reacted. Noah was also looking at AIC. His eyes lit up when he saw the dazzling white light erupting from AIC's body and withstanding the violent waves of fire. That girl can already use crush to such an extent. Perhaps it was because of the eruption before a great catastrophe. All in all, the crushing magic that AIC had used up almost all of her mental strength to cast was so dazzling that it could light up the entire cavern that was bigger than Eulalia. The dazzling white light swallowed the storm of flames bit by bit. Finally, it completely enveloped the violent storm of flames. Whing! A trembling sound suddenly rang out. The fiery storm that was covered by the dazzling white light was divided equally by the white lines that suddenly appeared. Bang! In the midst of the explosion, the firestorm that was covered in white lines suddenly exploded, turning into a wave of fiery red wind. Mixed with sparks that filled the sky, it spread out. AIC, who had just managed to shatter the firestorm with great difficulty, was unable to dodge the incoming shockwave and was blown away. Miss AIC. Rafia was shocked. Tiana and Tyne charged forward, leaping into the air and catching AIC, who was flying backwards like a cannonball, in their arms. However, the force that sent AIC flying was very powerful. Even though the Amazon sisters were LV5, they were still pushed back fiercely in the instant they caught AIC in their arms. They only stopped after sliding back for more than 10 meters. Ugh! Both Tiona and Tiona let loose a muffled groan as their slender arms became slightly numb. Cough cough. AIC directly knelt on the ground and coughed a few times. Her beautiful face had almost lost all color. It wasn't all caused by the injury. It was also due to the large consumption of mental strength. However, in the end, AIC relied on herself to block the terrifying firestorm and saved everyone's lives. The immortal of filth seemed to be very dissatisfied with the result and let out a tantrum cry. Seeing this scene, Finn, Gareth, and Bert rushed to the front of AIC, Tiona, and protected the three girls behind them. And pointed their weapons at the female monster with vigilance. Riveria went to AIC's side and squatted down and supported her. Are you okay? AIC said weakly. Her eyes were filled with unconcealable exhaustion. I'm fine, I can't tell at all, Riveria said bluntly. I'll reply to you first. The elixirs are here. Leafia hurriedly carried a large backpack and ran to AIC's side. She hurriedly rummaged through the high-grade elixirs and high-grade magic elixirs and stuffed them all to AIC. Miss AIC, hurry up and heal. AIC heard Leafia's words and knew that now wasn't the time to be stubborn. She accepted the 2 bottles of elixirs and began to heal. However, it was obvious that the enemy wasn't even willing to give AIC time to heal. "Oh Earth!" a roar, the melodious voice that sounded like a ballad rang out once more. The adventurers of Loki's clan widened their eyes in shock. Shortly after, a pitch-black magical formation unfolded beneath the Immortal of Filth and released pitch-black mana. Undoubtedly, the Immortal of Filth had just used a powerful spell a second ago. Logically speaking, even if she still had some mental strength left, there should be a slight cooldown time after casting such a powerful spell. However, the Immortal of Filth overturned common sense once more. She didn't need the cooldown time after casting the spell and began to chant once more, causing a surge of mana to rise. Old hag. Bert couldn't help but curse because he was too shaken. Stop daydreaming. Hurry up and activate the barrier. In fact, before Bert even spoke, Riveria had already begun to move. Dance, Fairy of the Air, Master of the Light, I have made a pact with the guardian god of the forest. I hope you will play the song of the earth to envelop us and protect us. I implore you to turn into a giant wall of light to protect us. As if to make up for her previous loss of composure, Riveria quickly constructed an incantation. She closed her eyes and raised her wand, causing the magical formation to revolve beneath her. However, the enemy also displayed the same extraordinary chant that she had just performed. Come, 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 shell of earth, artifact of black steel, hammer of shining stars. With the contract of creation, I command you to reverse, burn the sky, shatter the ground, build a bridge, combine into one. Descend the axe of the sky, the calamity of destruction. This time, the immortal of filth's chant was clearly much shorter than before. It had changed from an extremely long chant to a long chant. This meant that although the next attack wasn't as powerful as the previous one, it was much faster than before. In the name of the executor, I command the name Goblin, embodiment of Earth, Queen of Earth. The immortal of filth's incantation speed was astonishing, easily surpassing Riveria, who was also chanting a long chant. In the end, the immortal of filth still managed to cast her spell before Riveria did. Meteor shower. The light that blossomed from the pitch-black magical formation beneath the immortal of filth suddenly converged into a beam and soared into the sky, disappearing into the ceiling. Instantly, the ceiling of the huge cavern turned into a pitch-black night sky. Then, a meteor shower enveloped in black light appeared. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Sharp piercing sounds rang out, causing meteors to fall from the sky, turning into pitch-black streams of light that enveloped the area below like raindrops. In the nick of time, Riveria promptly released her own defensive magic. Dimension interception. A transparent light screen rose in front of everyone, protecting everyone behind the barrier. Then, the meteors directly fell on the transparent light screen. Bang 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 bang. Explosions rang out one after another. The heavy meteor shower bombarded the transparent light curtain and exploded, setting off waves of astonishing flames and shockwaves. The scene that seemed to be constantly bombarded by artillery fire made everyone behind the transparent light screen break out in cold sweat. On the other hand, Riveria gritted her teeth. Just like AIC, she continuously refined her mental strength into mana and infused it into her defensive magic, holding on bitterly. So far, Riveria's defensive spell had saved her companions in the clan countless times. That defensive spell called Dimension Interception was famous for its sturdiness and had never been breached. Unfortunately, today, Riveria's fortress was destined to be breached once. Crack! An incomparably subtle but exceptionally ear-piercing cracking sound came from the transparent light screen. At this moment, everyone's complexion changed. Just when everyone couldn't help but despair, a heavy voice abruptly interrupted. Boost! The moment that heavy voice sounded, an incomparably malevolent gauntlet was placed on Riveria's shoulder. Transfer. On the back of the gauntlet, a sparkling and translucent jade flashed with light. At the same time, Riveria felt a powerful force suddenly flowing into her body, fiercely increasing her strength by a large margin. Clang! The transparent light screen standing in front of everyone suddenly blossomed with dazzling light and became a lot thicker. Bang 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 bang. The meteor shower bombarded the light screen from the sky, setting off terrifying flames and shockwaves, but it was unable to shake the light screen. This situation made everyone's spirits rise as they looked at Riveria's side. Chapter 2055. At some unknown time, Noah had silently appeared beside Riveria. His gaze was still fixed on that huge female monster, but his hand was on Riveria's body. However, in that hand, a sinister, dragon-claw-like scarlet-red hand covered everything. It tightly gripped Riveria's shoulder, and the jade on the back of the hand blossomed with radiance. That's... Ace, Tiona, Tiny, and Leafia recognized the gauntlet almost immediately. That's... Although Finn, Riveria, and Gareth had never seen a gauntlet before, they were still able to determine what it was based on the current situation. What's that? Bert was the only one who didn't know what was going on, but he understood one thing. That was, with Noah's help, the defensive power of Riveria's barrier greatly increased, blocking the powerful magic of the filthy immortal fairy. Is that why Finn values him so much? The way Bert looked at Noah had already changed. However, the immortal of filth was dissatisfied. Seeing that her magic was blocked once again, the filthy immortal's beautiful face finally twisted. She let out a sharp shriek and released an extremely strong negative emotion. As the immortal of filth shrieked, countless black shadows began to appear behind it. It was a piece of yellow-green meat covered with mottled patterns. Countless larvae responded to the filthy immortal fairy's call one after another, squirming their bodies of different sizes as they surged forward. The scene of the dense yellow-green meat swarming over made all of the Loki clan members bite their lips. Even Finn was considering whether he should retreat here, return to the camp, and end this expedition. In the end, Noah was the only one who raised his arm that was covered by a ferocious crimson gauntlet. He stared straight at the larva-type army that was surging forward and spoke indifferently. "Let's go." It was a very short sentence, but it made everyone stunned. "If you don't have enough power, then I'll lend it to you." Noah stared closely at the immortal of filth and said so. "You just have to be bold and go. Leave that immortal of filth to me." After saying that, Noah extended the gauntlet that had been accumulating and multiplying in number to the front. "Transfer." The heavy but exceptionally clear voice made the crimson gauntlet blossom with a brilliant light that enveloped everyone around it. Under the shroud of that light, everyone felt it very clearly. An extremely powerful force ran through their bodies and flowed throughout their bodies. The powerful force brought an instant feeling of omnipotence, making every adventurer of the Loki clan close their eyes and feel the power flowing in their bodies. When they opened their eyes again, all of them were burning with fighting spirit. There was no need for words. No need for extra motivation. The powerful force flowing in their bodies made every adventurer of Loki's clan feel hot all over, and their fighting spirit instantly rose to the peak. Go! Following Finn's order, except for Riveria and Leafia, the rest of the adventurers stomped on the ground and rushed out. Ooh, 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 ooh. Finn, Gareth, Bert, Tiona, and Tiona all roared and bravely charged into the group of monsters. A's body was surrounded by a whirlwind-like whirlwind. Her pair of crystal-clear eyes flickered with a frightening expression as she also charged into the group of monsters. On one side was an endless army of larvae. On the other side was an adventurer group whose power had skyrocketed. The two sides met after a second and launched a fierce confrontation. The spear in Finn's hand at this moment turned into a windmill that swept away thousands of troops. The battle axe in Garrett's hand turned into a heavy hammer that thundered like thunder. The pair of silver boots on Bert's feet turned into flashes of lightning at this moment. The dual blades and battle axes in Tiona's hands also turned into raging waves of wind and rain at this moment. The group of level 1 adventurers charged into the army of larvae. The tips of their spears, axes, boots, and swords repeatedly fell on the bodies of the larvae and beheaded them on the spot. Poochie 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 poochie. The sound of silk being torn apart constantly echoed, causing the larvae to fall one after another. Bang 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 bang. The larvae that fell immediately exploded one after another, causing purplish-black corrosive liquid to spray in all directions. Finn's group, whose power had skyrocketed, completely ignored the corrosive liquid splashing towards them. They charged into the group of monsters at an astonishing speed. Even if the corrosive liquid touched their bodies, it would immediately be blocked by a layer of faint green or white light. It couldn't touch Finn's group at all. The green and white light were naturally the magic of Riveria and Leafia. Echo, pass on the wishes, robes of the forest, holy grail of exorcism, transform into a shield. The two elven archmages raised their wands high up as magic circles revolved beneath their feet. Their bodies rippled with refined mana as they chanted pleasant incantations with light voices while buffing Finn's group with defensive spells one after another, protecting their companions as they charged into the horde of monsters. Under such circumstances, Finn, Gareth, Bert, Tiona, and Tiona's group charged even more fearlessly. The weapons in their hands danced like bolts of lightning as they beheaded one monster after another. As for Ace, who was surrounded by whirlwinds, she didn't even need to cast defensive spells. She relied on the invisible winds that wrapped around her body to deflect the corrosive liquid from the larvae's self-destruction. The thin sword in her hand turned into streaks of silver light that slashed in all directions. For a time, the endless army of monsters couldn't even touch the people of Loki's clan. They were killed several times by AIC's group, and their numbers decreased sharply. At this moment, Ace, Finn, Gareth, Bert, Tiona, and Tyogni had all become meat grinders, shredding all the monsters in their path. In less than 30 seconds, they had killed 1/10 of the larvae army. Ah! The female monster let out a furious shriek. As if she couldn't bear to watch any longer, a terrifying amount of magic power surged from her body. Fire, come! That was the beginning of a long chant spell called Firestorm. Roar, roar, roar. Fire vortex, red lotus cliff, karmic roar, borrowing the power of the sudden strong wind to seal the world, the burning sky, the burning earth, the burning ocean, the burning springs, the burning mountains, the burning life, turning everything into scorched earth, setting off the horn of anger and sigh, paying the price with the life of my beloved hero. She began to chant again, and the mana that rose from the female monster became more and more terrifying. A huge red magic circle flashed in front of her, and like the muzzle of a cannon, it was aimed at the Rockies who were charging in the midst of the monsters. It was a pity that no matter how fast the Fairy of Filth's chant was, it still needed time. Even if the Fairy of Filth could shorten the long chant that would take most sorcerers a long time to chant, it still couldn't compare to an instantaneous spell. Thus, as the Fairy of Filth spat out a ballad-like chant, a strange phenomenon occurred. Whoosh! A thick beam of magic power suddenly shot into the sky, streaking across space and landing heavily on the magic circle in front of the female monster. Bang! There was a flash and an explosion at the same time. The magic circle in front of the Fairy of Filth was cleanly shattered by the beam of magic power, turning into pieces of broken glass like a mirror. The Fairy of Filth's chant came to an abrupt end. She widened her eyes and looked in the direction of the beam of magic power. There, Noah raised a hand, his dark, deep eyes meeting the Fairy of Filth's shocked gaze. Magic power that was far more powerful than the Fairy of Filth surged from his body. Chapter 2056. Wang. The atmosphere began to tremble. The terrifying mana fluctuations turned into surging gales that continuously swirled within the huge cavern. With such a shocking amount of mana fluctuating all over his body, Noah slowly lowered his hands, and his body began to distort slightly. Sensing the terrifying movement, whether it was Ace, Finn, Gareth, Bert, Tiona, and Tiona who were charging in the group of monsters, or Riveria and Leafia who were chanting incantations, they all stopped what they were doing and looked over. Thus, everyone present clearly saw it. The appearance of the young man who was fluctuating with terrifying mana fluctuations began to change. That extremely ordinary face that did not have the slightest bit of outstanding features faded bit by bit. It was replaced by another face. It was a face that everyone in Eulalia was extremely familiar with. Bert's eyes suddenly widened to the limit when he saw that face, not to mention those who knew about it for the time being. At this moment, Noah finally returned to his original appearance. In order to change his appearance, not only did Noah constantly provide mana to support the transformation, but he also tried his best to suppress the circulation of mana in his body in order to eliminate his own aura and presence, so as to not expose his overly powerful aura. In this way, it was equivalent to letting Noah suppress most of his power. Now that Noah had slightly used his true form, the mana in his body could no longer be suppressed. It rapidly surged like a raging wave, causing Noah's aura and presence to skyrocket. He did not even maintain his transformation and returned to his original appearance. Under everyone's gaze, Noah met the immortal of filth's still astonished gaze and narrowed his eyes. "I don't know who you are, nor do I know why you were devoured by monsters and turned into this filthy appearance. But I know that if you still have your rationality before you were devoured, you must be in great pain to see yourself like this, right?" Noah said softly. "So, you can be free here." With that, the mana fluctuations that surged from Noah's body gradually began to transform into phosphorescent energy. The phosphorescent energy was like a flame that burned on Noah's body bit by bit until it became extremely violent and reached the ceiling of the cavern. That incomparably violent power caused everyone in Loki's clan to fall into shock. Then, everyone present realized what was going on. Noah was ready to crusade against the filthy immortal. He was going to crusade against a female monster that could even surpass Eulalia's most powerful LV7 magic power. Mr. Noah. Leafia could not help but speak up. "Please wait." "Don't." Noah did not turn his head, his voice was strong and powerful as he looked at the immortal. "My opponent is just a fallen immortal. My Aster will never lose." "Aster?" Leafia was startled. "Aster?" Finn and the rest were stunned as well. "Aster?" I muttered the name softly. "Aster?" The immortal of filth also tilted his head and repeated the name of the strongest sword spirit like a parrot. Under such circumstances, Noah smiled indifferently. "Open your eyes wide and see clearly." Noah raised one hand and said, "What is a true immortal?" On the back of Noah's hand, the crisscrossing sword imprint formed by the sword spirit suddenly lit up, bursting with a burst of dazzling light particles that suddenly appeared in the air and slowly floated out. The moment the light particles appeared, the immortal of filth's eyes widened once again. On the other hand, felt her heart beating faster than ever before. The blood in her body began to heat up, causing her starry eyes to ripple. Then, the light particles began to gather and gradually condensed into a human figure. A silvery white waist-length hair hung down softly. Her white skin was as smooth as a pearl. The hem of her dress swayed gently in the wind. A pair of mysterious eyes gradually opened, shining like gems. The petite elven girl appeared in the dazzling light and landed on the ground. That's Finn, Riveria, Gareth, Bert, Tiona, Tyogni, and Rafia were all stunned. Aic's eyes couldn't help but waver. She looked straight at the petite elf girl and squeezed out two words with difficulty. "Immortal essence, beautiful. Holy. Pure. Stainless." These words seemed to have been prepared for the girl who appeared in the light, and all of them gathered in that petite body. That's right. This was a true immortal. The immortal of filth looked at Aster in a trance, and his entire body began to tremble. The filthy immortal fairy's joyful cry echoed in the air like a roar. The female monster, who was in pursuit of great power and craved to devour immortal essence, instinctively felt that it was the most delicious food. Therefore, the filthy immortal spirit cried tears of joy. "Aster! Aster!" The filthy immortal fairy, on the other hand, repeated the name she had just learned in an innocent and happy voice. "Eat you. Become one with me. Aster." Like a young girl chasing after her beloved, the filthy immortal spirit cast a burning gaze at Aster. Then, the filthy immortal spirit moved. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Tentacles turned into spears that covered the sky and suddenly fell from the sky. They mercilessly fell in the direction of Noah and Aster. "Be careful!" everyone cried out in alarm. However, Noah only looked at the rain of spears, and his voice didn't waver in the slightest. "Cold Queen of Steel, holy sword that slays demons and demons, turn into a sword of steel and bestow me with divine power." No one could understand the incantation that was written in the Elvish language. But it didn't matter. Because it was fine as long as Aster could understand it. It looked somewhat beautiful, but it gave people a very strange feeling, and even a very evil feeling. From this point of view, the filthy fairy was decisively different from the other monsters. Is it because it swallowed too many magic stones that its magic stone changed? Or is it because it swallowed the fairy? Noah pondered. It seems that, with the addition of special characteristics, the price of this magic stone is estimated to be an astronomical figure. The power that Noah transferred to the people of Loki's clan could not be maintained forever. In the end, it would fade with the passage of time and eventually disappear completely. Therefore, after bravely charging for a while, the doubled power in the bodies of Loki's clan had disappeared. However, the number of larvae monsters had also decreased sharply. Moreover, because the female monster was killed, all of them fell into chaos. They did not fight back at all and only fled randomly. In this way, Finn and the others naturally would not let this opportunity go. They constantly chased after the larvae monsters that were blindly fleeing. This hunt lasted for more than half an hour. When the last larvae monster fell and exploded, spraying a large amount of corrosive liquid, the group finally returned to the wilderness where the female monster was. They were all panting miserably. However, even though he was panting, Bert still rushed all the way back and directly rushed in the direction of Noah, cursing as he ran. "You bastard!" Seeing Bert's fierce look, Tiona and Tioni were shocked and hurriedly rushed up to hold Bert down. "What are you doing?" Bert struggled with all his might. "Let go of me." A Grade 1 adventurer's desperate struggle was simply like a raging bull, easily flinging any adult into the air. Unfortunately, Tiona and Tioni were also first-level adventurers, and their levels were not lower than Bert's. Moreover, in terms of strength alone, the Amazon sisters were even higher than Bert. Therefore, Tiona and Tioni easily suppressed Bert. Under Bert's struggle, they sighed one after another. "So it really turned out like this. That's why I didn't want to tell this werewolf his true identity. You knew from the start." Bert struggled even more desperately. "You bastards! You actually invited this guy into your clan behind my back. I'll bite you to death." Seeing Bert's desperate look, Noah was really speechless. "I said, I don't have any deep grudges with you. At most, we're not on good terms. Do you have to be like this?" "Ha! No deep grudges." Bert's face twitched as he yelled at Noah. "Go to hell. No deep grudges. I can't wait to swallow you whole. How dare you say we don't have any deep grudges?" Bert began to struggle even more desperately, and it took a lot of effort for both Tiona and Tiona to just barely restrain the berserk werewolf. "Wah! When did Bert's arms become strong enough to break free from us?" "Tiona, is this the power of jealousy?"